Guys, and welcome to today's video where I thought I'd go through each of the species that I keep and rate them out of 10 for the following. So availability, so how easy it is to find and buy them. Diet, so how easy it is to provide the diet they require, and also we're going to tie in the cost of the food to that rating. Then we have ease of care. Now I'm coming from this as if I was talking to someone who's a beginner, newbie to the hobby, so obviously if you have experience with reptiles already, some of these will be pretty simple to care for. Then we have handleability, so if you're like me, you like interacting with your pet, we'll look at how much they tolerate handling and just the general interaction you get out of having them as a pet. And finally, visibility, for those people who prefer animals almost like display animals that don't necessarily need handling, but you can at least watch them during the day or the evening and enjoy them that way. I do keep 6 different species, as you can see by the list here. We'll start off with geckos and we go on to skinks. I'll put little chapters at the bottom below, so if you want to skip between animals you can. If not, sit back, relax, I think this is going to be a long video. But let's start off with leopard geckos, and by the way, I do have new merch out, so if you are interested and you have a gecko who is a very good little doggo, then please check out leopardgeckomerch.com. But anyway, availability I put 10 out of 10. Whether it's a reptile shop or a general pet shop that happens to sell reptiles, you will almost definitely find a leopard gecko. Diet, I gave them 9 out of 10. Feeder insects are readily available and they will eat a range of them. However, I only marked it down by 1 just because some people, the thought of having insects in the house is just a no-no, so that wouldn't be 100% perfect, but if you're not fussed, then it's great. Ease of care, I actually gave them 7 out of 10. So leopard geckos are considered beginner reptiles, but sadly we see that even these guys who are meant to be so simple to keep still get cared for incorrectly, even though there's abundance of information about them online, in books, everywhere. For some reason, I don't know if it's people think, they're a beginner reptile, I don't really have to look into them, or they're hardy, so even if I keep them wrong, they will be fine, or there's a starter kit here, I'll just buy that and the lizard and we'll be all good. Whatever it is, it's really frustrating because we still see MBD in leopard geckos, or they get stuck shed and lose toes. So as much as I might find them easy, and maybe if you already own them you find them easy, as with any pet, much research is needed beforehand, and we need to ignore that beginner reptile label in a way because they deserve a lot more research than some people are giving them. Handleability, I put 9 out of 10. I think they're fairly easy to tame and handle. Some will actively want to come out and interact with you, which personally I find great. And in terms of visibility, I actually gave them 7 out of 10, only because if you're looking for an animal that you can glance over and look in the tank during the day, this probably isn't the pet for you, because a lot of the time they are hiding. Sometimes they'll be cryptic basking, sometimes on the very odd occasion openly basking, but they're not a diurnal species, so they won't be out active during the day. But they still get a 7 because if you are at school during the day, you're at work during the day, they're quite good because they're generally more active in the evening. And for me, my leopard geckos are out from 7 PM onwards. So overall, out of 50, the leopard gecko gets a 42, which is pretty respectable. Next, crested geckos. So availability is 10 out of 10. Like leopard geckos, they're almost everywhere. Recently I discovered that Morph Market does actually have a UK and European side of it, and my goodness, it is full of crested geckos. They're very easy to breed and everyone's selling them. Diet, I also went for 10 out of 10 because, of course, I'd always encourage people to offer live feeder insects now and again because it provides physical and mental enrichment. But say technically you were somewhere where they're like, you can't have insects in here at all. There's quite a few good diets on the market, like the SFG range, every single flavour includes insects in it. So you could technically just keep them on the powdered diet. As I said, I would encourage live feeders, but 10 out of 10 because you can own a reptile without having to deal with bugs. Ease of care, I've given them 8 out of 10. Similar to leopard geckos, are often sold as beginner reptiles, and generally if you have experience with reptiles you will find them super simple to care for. Just a couple of things to consider: if you live in a particularly dry and hot place and you don't have access to like aircon, they might not be the pet for you. I know someone who, it wasn't particularly hot where they lived, but it was very dry, and it almost became a part-time job just trying to keep this gecko's tank humid enough, so that's certainly something to consider. Handleability, I've given them 9 out of 10. They're such sweet, docile creatures. Lyra loves to come out and hang out on my shoulder as I go about doing little jobs in the reptile room, but I guess I knocked them down by 1 just because they can jump, and though I'd say they're not unpredictable, like you can feel their back legs tense up when they're about to jump, that you know they're about to do it. So that's fine for me, but for some people they don't like jumpy animals, so that's why they get knocked down by 1. Visibility, I give them 8 out of 10. Now during the day they will be sleeping and they need to be left to sleep, but usually they'll be asleep on a leaf or a coconut hide, so you do get to kind of see them. But like the leopard geckos, they are crepuscular, so they're more visible in the evening. Overall, the crested gecko gets 45 out of 50. Now chahouas, or mossy prehensile-tailed geckos, availability I'll actually give 8 out of 10. Certainly I have seen more chahouas in reptile shops than I ever did back in 2017 when I got Drogo. Back then I was chasing down chahoua breeders online because, you know, I hadn't actually ever seen one in a shop. I also remember at the time of getting Drogo, there were quite a few people in the US saying it was really hard to get chahouas at the time, and some were being sold for like $1,000. But I think that's come down now and they are far more available. Diet, I gave them 9 out of 10, very similar to crested geckos. They can live on a powdered diet, however certainly with chahouas they do love their insects and I would recommend offering them some live ones now and again. Ease of care, 8 out of 10. I'd say they're pretty similar to Careful, just maybe slightly advanced compared to crested geckos, but similar to cresties you do need to be mindful that you're not living in a particularly hot or particularly dry area. Handleability, I put 7 out of 10, just because I find that Drogo, my Chahoua, he is chill, but unlike Lyra, like, if I didn't handle him, I don't think he would care. He doesn't really have that thing of, like, I want to come out and I want to be handled. Like, he's fine when you get him out, and he'll sit on you or climb up on your shoulder, but I will say he's a little more unpredictable compared to Lyra. He can suddenly just decide to turn and shoot off. Like, he's not going to run up a wall like a day gecko, but he's definitely quicker than Lyra. Visibility, I put 8 out of 10. Similar to Lyra, like, you'll find him sleeping in different places during the day. I mean, sometimes he might be out of sight, but he kind of changes it up. Like my other geckos, he is more active during the evening. Crepuscular does mean active at dusk and dawn, but to be honest, I'm never up early enough to see them active during the really early hours, so most of my interactions happen in the evening. But overall, Chahouas get 40 out of 50. Now for the Skinks, which I've got 3 Skinks in the last 2-ish years, so Skinks are still fairly new to me, but we'll start with the one I've had the longest, the pink tongue skink. Availability, I've put 5 out of 10. They're not a species I've really seen in a shop before, and they're more often sold directly from a breeder, so I'd recommend joining like Facebook groups or forums where breeders are likely to let you know when they have babies. Diet, I've put 4 out of 10, just because Rex, my pink tongue skink, is very picky and will only eat snails. This means my life revolves around breeding snails or sourcing snails. My freezer has snails in it. It's a lot. However, some people will find that their skinks will eat a variety, but then they also say they can be really picky. Now in the wild, pink tongue skinks do mainly eat slugs and snails, so it is natural for them to want to eat snails, but pink tongue skinks and being picky kind of go hand in hand. Ease of care, I've put 6 out of 10. Like, personally, I don't find him too difficult to care for. However, pink tongue skinks, they love to climb, they love to burrow, so they enjoy the vertical, the horizontal, they love the branches, the cork clothes. They will explore everything, which, don't get me wrong, can be absolutely great, but I guess for a beginner, it can be a lot to sort of take on. And also, because their diet and their pickiness, I guess that knocks down their score a little bit. Like, you might think, okay, Rex, you're all out of snails, it's okay, he'll end up eating something, he'll be hungry enough. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that he would probably just starve himself. Like, that sounds extreme, but when I first got him, he was 2 grams. I offered him every single thing, online said to offer him, including frozen apple snails, which were defrosted. Because those snails were boiled before being frozen, because they were for human consumption, he would not eat them. He was not gaining weight. He refused to eat anything until I gave him a live snail. So yeah, you might be lucky, you might not get a picky one, but my goodness, you might end up with a Rex, who I love, and he loves snails, but it's not for everyone. Handleability, I put 9 out of 10. I absolutely love interacting with Rex. He is so sweet, he's so inquisitive, he can sit on you for ages and do nothing, or he'll climb all on you. He's very predictable in his movements, he isn't particularly like skittish, he's very sturdy, so he's one of the reptiles that if I have a non-reptile keeping friend round and I'm like, hey, check out this lizard, I feel comfortable handing him to someone because he's very good with being handled. Visibility, I put 8 out of 10. It would have been higher because he has this massive tank and he will be all over it exploring it during the day, and it's really interesting to watch. I don't really see him at night, but he is out during the day. However, the thing that brings it down is he does brumate. So during the winter months, what I'll find is he'll go to sleep in his log for a week or two at a time, come up and bask for a few hours and go back. He doesn't eat in this time, you don't really want to interact with him in this time, and so if he's your only reptile during the winter months, you may feel like you don't have any pets. Overall, the pink tongue skink gets 32 out of 50, which seems far too low because he's an absolute delight to own, but maybe just a bit more difficult for beginners just due to his specialist diet and lack of availability. Next, we have the Indonesian blue tongue skink. Availability, I would say 8 out of 10 because I actually find a lot of reptile shops keep them. However, a lot of the Indonesian ones can be wild caught. Personally, for me, I only ever want captive bred reptiles, so I wouldn't go for a wild caught one. So just keep an eye on that when you're looking, but they do tend to be quite readily available. Diet, I've put 7 out of 10, so they eat a range of things, which actually makes feeding time super interesting. You can really change things up. But on top of that, I think it's important for a keeper to fully grasp the variety of foods that they can and should eat. So for example, someone might think, oh, they eat insects, I'm just going to feed them locusts and that's it, when actually you do need to provide a variety, and that can cost quite a bit. I did actually do a video where I added up how much I spent on food for each reptile in a year, and it's quite surprising. Handleability, I put 7 out of 10. So I don't handle Bruce as often as, say, my leopard geckos, but I sort of interact with him every day, whether that's just me waving through the window, going, hi Bruce, or, you know, misting his tank. He is a very interactive animal who's very aware of what's going on in the room, which is really cool. But what I'll say is, when I do get him out, I don't get to handle him hand to hand like you would with like a gecko. Because he's so big, it's very difficult to do that. So he much prefers to walk around the reptile room. But because he's so curious and has such little arms and legs, he will like fold them in and go in places he shouldn't. Like he got behind the leopard gecko towers, which I didn't even think was possible. But he's a very inquisitive chap, very entertaining. But I guess because of his size, and if you were wanting an animal that you can just easily handle on your lap, maybe that isn't the best option because he loves to explore. Visibility, I put 10 out of 10. He is always out during the day because he's diurnal, so you won't see him at night. But if you want a reptile that when you pop in the room, he looks at you, he acknowledges you, he's curious, he's often doing something. He might be eating, he might be drinking, he might be digging, he's doing something, then blue tongue skinks are great for that. So overall, blue tongue skink gets 39 out of 50. But one thing you should consider is due to their size, they will need a very big enclosure, so that will be more room and will cost more to set up. And finally, my African fire skink. Please keep in mind, I've only had him for, I think, just over 2 months, so he is still getting used to me. Now, availability, I put 3 out of 10. Prior to getting Bernie, I had never seen one in person. I'd never seen one in a shop. I'd never handled one. And I don't often see them captive bred, which Bernie is. Most are wild caught, which, as I mentioned, I personally want to stay away from. So they certainly aren't the easiest to find. Diet, I put 9 out of 10. Bernie will eat anything that moves and fits in his mouth. I'm pretty sure he's even eaten some of the isopods, which none of my other reptiles would eat. And even despite being such a shy and sensitive reptile, he ate from day one, so that's good to see. Ease of care, I've put 7 out of 10. There's not too much to it other than making sure he has deep enough substrate and it's kept somewhat moist but not too damp, that he gets scale rot but it's humid enough. Pretty simple really. Handleability, I've put 3 out of 10. It's still very early days for me, but from talking to other keepers, you can either get one that will be comfortable enough to be handled now and again, or you get one that never wants to be handled, and is only handled because of a quick health check or taking its weight. Not to mention, I have seen some really bad bruises and bites from people who have managed to handle their fire skinks, so we will cross that bridge when we get to it, but yeah, 3 out of 10 for handleability. Now visibility, I gave him 2 out of 10 just because he spends most of his time burrowing, which of course when I first got him I knew this was a trait of the fire skink. They're a burrowing species. Now this might go up in time, like the more he gets used to me, maybe I'll find that actually fire skinks will hang out more. But for me, the only way I've really been able to see him is via my spy camera, which is where most of this footage is coming from. I'm sure as he settles in, I might see him more. Like, I'm even seeing little breakthroughs where, like, there's a bathroom next to the reptile room, so every time we go in there, he's no longer instantly hiding because someone's walked past a reptile room. So that's progress, and it's going to take some time, but at the moment I will say visibility is 2 out of 10. So overall, the fire skink gets 24 out of 50. It is definitely a species that requires a ton of patience, and you've got to get it because you love observing the species from afar via a spy camera. But as I said, it's still early days, and with Bernie, he lived in a shop for about a year before I got him, so his journey might be different from one that you get. Say if you get one from a baby who's been handled by the breeder a lot, you might have a whole different experience. Anyway, here's a rundown of the overall scores. If you keep any of these species, do you agree? Do you disagree? What would you change? Let me know in the comments below. But if you haven't already, please subscribe. But thank you for watching, and goodbye.